Thanks. I'm really excited to be here.
Can we turn the music off, please?
That's a great idea. So excited to be here. I do want to, I know we did a lot of prayer, but I just want to start with a little prayer invocation and just say, may it be with the blessings of all beings and bodies and beings without, that anything that I share from my experience today lands with you to support your intentions, both spoken and unspoken. Whatever does not support you, please leave here to compost back into the earth for others to pick up as they need. Amen. So, all I have to share with you is my experience, which hopefully lifts up what you already know, brightens areas you might not be considering, and then leaves you with something tangible that you can use going forward. I'm a pragmatist. If you can't use it, I don't have time for it. So, just show of hands, how many of you know anything about neurosculpting? Okay, great. I like it when most people don't, because then I get to shape it in a way that works best for you and kind of dispel any preconceived ideas. But it ultimately is a practice that we're going to do later today. So right now I'm going to give you a key to the kingdom. There are many keys to your kingdom. There's prayer, religion, friends, love, yoga, exercise, art, creativity, poetry. There's so many keys to the kingdom. But I'm going to share with you mine, and maybe that'll be another one for you. And it really starts with just a brief history of what I do and why I do it. So my first official initiation was at 15. On my birthday, I was struck by lightning in the base of the spine and proceeded to have a lifelong seizure disorder from that moment that caused me to flatline on 7+ occasions. So my initiation into the body was painful and traumatic and bizarre, and I had no roadmap. I had some guide rails. I had meditation from a very early age. I had religion, which I walked away from. I had science. I had mysticism. But none of them really, really landed me in my body. And one of the things I heard when I was listening to everyone speak their intention was that not only did I hear it through my ears, I heard it through my body, that everyone was finding sparks of yes in everybody's intention. And there was this thread, this, oh my God, we're all human. Wait, we're all scared. We all want to be better. We all want to find self-love. We all want to ground. We all want to navigate next year without going, succumbing to chaos. Yes, we all want the same things with nuanced expression. And when I heard that, I was like, yes, I'm in the right place, because what I want to share with you is a mammalian perspective for how you can evoke your best self into the flavor you spoke out there. We're all mammals, not to be reductionist, but we are. It's a agreed upon reality that we have, that we're mammals. And as such, we are not really mysterious to each other, yet we act like we are. We act like, I can't walk into this crowd and as a new person in this community and be comfortable. Why? Because not a one of us here is more expert at being human than all the other humans in this room. So why is it so difficult for us to move into our oneness? Well, because we're not taught. And because we are under the illusion that we are different and complicated. And the longer we believe that, the more it's true. So I want to reduce it to simple so that we start from a base of empathic resonance. And that is, you're a mammal. So am I. So is the person next to you. So is the person not yet born. Well, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what's coming. But all the people born before, we all agreed we were mammals. And there's a set of rules that many of us actually negate by accident. Raise your hand if you think you're supposed to calm down to go find that thing that you set out there. Who feels like, if I just calm down and get quiet, I might find it? Okay? Who thinks if I rage like a banshee, it's going to be right there? A couple. Great. You're ahead of the game. So we're going to go there. How many of you use a meditation app or anything? How many of you have your own meditation practice? Awesome. Many of you are already intuitively governing your body with sovereignty and agency and self-governance, which is the key to the kingdom in terms of your nervous system. I am very steeped in the biohacking world, and I love it. And I love all the people there who give me all these opportunities to speak. But its value system values exogenous regulation outside of the self. Tools, supplements, practices, devices, mechanics. And those are changing the world. They are changing your lifespan and the quality of your life. They are changing the story of longevity. But the endogenous practices will do the very same things. And so that's what I want to bring to you. A discussion of all of the endogenous ways you can affect profound state change to position you to organically let emerge from you that which is already there, the thing you set at the fire. That's not outside of yourself. So, for that, I need to go to the nervous system, and we need to go to the nervous system basics. It is the operating system of your physical body. It is the interface your spirit communicates through and perceives through. It is the interface. And I venture to guess if we could navigate that interface a little more gracefully, we would take all of that wasted energy and direct it with laser focus towards that which is truly important from the heart out to the world. So, your nervous system only sometimes serves you best to calm down. Only sometimes. The self-help world, the metaphysical world may lead you to believe that you are supposed to get quiet and calm down, and that is absolutely not true at least 50% of the time. And that is leading us down a road of spiritual bypassing, of pretending we don't have human emotions, of shaming ourselves for being petty and small and judgmental and shameful and judgmental and. As though those are lower vibration experiences. That's not how vibration works. Vibration works by frequency in a spectrum. A fast frequency, we tend to say high vibration. But that's in the same spectrum. It's just divided into more parts. And the things we say lower vibration as though they're bad or something we have to overcome, it's the same spectrum. It's just a bigger interval. That's how frequency works. So there, in my lexicon, there's no high and low vibration. There just is vibration. How I dial myself through it based on what this three-dimensional world around me is asking for is my superpower. That's your superpower. And I'll get a little potty mouth because I get very excited. This bullshit about you have to be calm and you have to love everything. Big picture, yes. Small picture, no. You do not have to love everything. But what you get to do is have enough governance over your nervous system to recognize when you don't, ask yourself why, go do the work, figure it out, and move yourself where you want to be so you can be your best self and be a contributor to the world around you. And that means you must address shadow. If you don't address shadow, you are bypassing, and somewhere down the line, you will be pummeled by what your nervous system is doing because you don't understand it. So let's talk about what your nervous system is doing in any given moment. When we are here with like-minded people, with food and beautiful programming and prayer and music, many of us get to go, did you feel at some point since you got here? Okay, that is homeostasis, and it looks different for every single one of us. But that is your nervous system's configuration for optimized regulation. And optimized regulation looks like just enough arousal to go, a hawk. And just enough downregulation to go, I don't need to tend to all the noise behind me. The balance of toned, activated, alive nervous system with downregulated relaxation, that is homeostasis. Many of us call that relaxation. That is not accurate. It is just enough tone and arousal to be used to mobilize and reach a hand out or give someone a hug. So let's get rid of this word relaxation and let's talk about reality. In any given moment, your nervous system is pushing you towards or away from homeostasis, towards or away from this congruence and this balance. In life, that might be your job, stress, politics, religion, money, fiction, a movie, or a text message in all caps with a poop emoji. And that will give you a state change because your mind is assigning meaning to that thing. The moment you assign meaning to that thing, you are not in present time. You are evoking anthologies of associative learning to make meaning of the thing coming at you. So you are dipping out of present time into the past, pulling some associations, looking at this, perceiving it, making sense of it, and then responding. The response is in present time, but the meaning is not. And so then we get to respond in one of two ways to that capital text with the poop emoji. We can either arouse, going from homeostasis all the way in that direction to anger, aggression, rage, pacing, the animal in the cage. I can't believe. Raise your hand if you saw the Key and Peele skit where they're misreading the texts? This is like the optimal representation of the nervous system. I highly recommend you watch that immediately after this retreat. You read the text, you have no idea the context of the text, and you give it context, and now you have a state change. And we can go in this direction, arousal, sympathetic arousal. This is where we have just a little uptick of adrenaline and cortisol, just a little bit of movement from wherever we are in the brain towards the midbrain, towards limbic functioning that says something threatened me, annoyed me, is not something I want to experience right now, therefore I must protect myself by way of reaction. That's sympathetic arousal. And we make that wrong and bad in the metaphysical world, in the self-help world. Arousal is bad. Namaste. Namaste sometimes means the same thing as bless her heart. You get that, right? You've probably said that and not really meant, I see the light in you. So we perceive this to be bad, lower vibration. I'm angry, I'm jealous. Oh, I have to overcome that. But it is just a dial in a direction. And it is dialing in that direction, not because it is bad, but because you are accessing a legacy of meaning. Your subjective world put you there. And your subjective world is yours. It is not bad. It is what made you you. So it's worth investigation. And that's over here. But raise your hand if during extreme stress and overwhelm, you are a deer in the headlights, or you shut down, or you can't speak, or you can't have input into your eyes and ears, or people talk to you and I can't really focus. Raise your hand if that's you. Okay. In those moments, you're not going over there, you're going over there. And when you go over there as a stress response, you are going towards parasympathetic shutdown. How many of you have heard parasympathetic is good? Bullshit. Total bullshit. Parasympathetic is good if your environment needs you to be parasympathetic. But if your environment is demanding you mobilize and you are parasympathetic, you will die. So relaxation, good, scrap it. Parasympathetic, good, get rid of it. It's a state of being, and not every situation requires the same state of being. So let's talk about parasympathetic response. We think that's this. That's not parasympathetic. That is parasympathetic balanced with just enough sympathetic. That's homeostasis. Parasympathetic shutdown is freeze. It is a depressed heart rate. It is a cut off of oxygen from the prefrontal cortex. It is an activation of brainstem governance, which is not oxygen supportive for your brain. It is a state of anesthetization. It is a state of absolute shutdown. That's what real parasympathetic is to the extreme. So instead of making these things bad and this thing good, let's talk about when you need to be what? If you had 64 crayons, wouldn't you want to be able to use all of them to make beautiful art instead of just the primary colors, because that's what we say are colors? So, the color of sympathetic arousal is to mobilize you. You needed sympathetic arousal to go from sitting to standing at the fire. You needed sympathetic arousal to get a voice out. Some of you said, I want to find my voice. I already know you're probably over here. And that's not good, because it's causing you suffering. It might be good for someone else, but for you, when you stand at that fire and you say, I want to find my voice, that means you haven't felt as though you found it, which means you are likely not mobilizing, because if you were, you would speak. And when you are in parasympathetic imbalance, guess what? Your vocal cords innervate your vagus nerve and vice versa. You will have no voice when you are too parasympathetic. So, if you're not finding that you have a voice, stop reaching for a relaxation meditation. Stop. Mobilize. Embody. Dance. Do yoga. Run. Sing. Touch the earth. Touch your body. Jump. Hum. Do this. Horse lips. All of this innervates the vagus nerve, your parasympathetic shutdown. So if we're over here, we're too overwhelmed by life. I need 5 hours to regulate myself before I can have a conversation. I'm probably over here. Unless I need 5 hours to regulate myself because I'm going to punch someone, then I'm probably over here. Okay, so I grew up Sicilian. I am an Italian citizen. I grew up Sicilian in New York. I lived all the way over here, about to fall over the edge. This was dinner time. Got a backhand to my mouth on numerous occasions from a mother who loved me to the ends of the earth. I never perceived the smack I got was anything but love. But that's how Italians communicate. She shoved food in my mouth the minute I walked in the door before I knew what it was. That's alarming and traumatic. And then when I wasn't there, I was all the way over here, completely dissociated. The lightning strike pushed me here. So when my nervous system got electrocuted, I became highly vasovagal. I became the extreme parasympathetic shutdown example. This is how I get to say from my lived experience, it's bullshit to say parasympathetic is good. It killed me 7 times. Literally. When my nervous system was overwhelmed, my brainstem and vagus nerve shut my heart off, clamped my voice, cut off oxygen to the brain, and I went here and died. Once in front of my 3-year-old daughter in a Whole Foods food court. She watched them resuscitate me. Why? Because I had a seizure, because I bit into a chicken bone, because my nervous system didn't know how to handle stress. Now I know why my lifelong meditation practice never healed my nervous system. I've been meditating since I was 12. That's not normal for a New York Sicilian. I have no idea why it happened, but it did, and it was making me worse. It's my spiritual practice, so it gives me faith, but it made my body worse. So let's talk about going here and going there and how that all leads to your total sense of agency. First and foremost, you have to start recognizing where you are dialing yourself. So sympathetic arousal, you're activated. You're starting to fixate your thoughts. You're starting to create all the arguments. But he said and she said, and but then you said that, and remember when you said that? And then over here, more sympathetic arousal, clenching my jaw, shaking my legs. I'm getting antsy, or I'm talking louder, or I'm projecting, or my fingers going into your face, or my palm, or I gotta get out of here, can't listen to you, or I'm gonna shut you down entirely with explosive expletives, all the way to I'm gonna throw a punch, I'm gonna attack. Sympathetic arousal. When this is important to have full access to, is half of life. There's a bobcat and a cub here. Maybe you didn't get that note yet. Maybe you'll do that on your permaculture tour. If that situation, actually that probably warrants freeze, so that's a bad one. But let's just say somebody's following you down a dark alley. You want full range access to sympathetic arousal. That is in your highest good in that moment. If your child is about to fall off a cliff, you want midbrain, no thought, instantaneous fight, flee, survival skills to kick in so you grab that child without even hesitating, without even evaluating if it's dangerous for you to do so. That is why we're alive. We're actually alive in this room because we did not make sympathetic arousal bad as a species until now, until 100 years ago. It's how we could plow fields. It's how we can muscle through childbirth. Do you know what gargantuan strength and endorphin, and adrenaline it takes to birth a child. All of that. But when we're there and we don't need to be, it is wasted energy. It is an incongruence between everything we are feeling and everything the world is asking for us. And this is what we've focused on in the self-help world. We have focused on those moments of incongruence, and then we've labeled them as that's what it must be all the time, therefore it's bad. Those are the moments of, you're not really coming at me, but I still want to punch you. You better calm down. True. Therefore, anytime we are too aroused, it must be bad. And then over here, I was praised as a child for being grounded and brave. So after the lightning, she's so grounded and brave. I was blind twice from blunt force to my eyes, 2 separate times. She's so grounded and brave. I was not grounded and brave. I was 100% dissociative. I was gone. I couldn't feel anything from here down. It was a gift. Rode me through a lot of trauma. But I could do things and not be aware that I was doing them. And I couldn't hear my body signals. And I couldn't digest. And I had to have all sorts of ridiculous body shutdown to get me to listen to my body. So extreme, incongruent, parasympathetic is deadly and dangerous. But appropriate use of that is important for listening. Because I can't hear you if I'm here yelling. So yes, sometimes I gotta be here and be quiet. But present. So this spectrum is neutral. Your congruence or incongruence with how you use it, it's what's good or bad. This is neutral. So later today, we're going to do a practice that gets you to dial back from there or back from there, regardless of where you are. But I want to give you the building blocks of it first. So I want to talk a little bit about what's going on in the brain with neuroplasticity, so you understand how these states contribute or take away from neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity, very quickly, is a state of learning. That's it. That's it. When your brain has the capacity to learn, focus, adapt, shift, that's neuroplasticity. It doesn't happen just in brain cells. It happens in synapses. It happens in various parts of the brain. It happens in your muscles. We are constantly adapting. It's why we have electricity instead of walking around with a torch with fire. It's why we wear clothes made of refined materials instead of, animal hide that we just killed and brain tanned. It's because we've adapted. We are a neuroplastic species. When we heighten neuroplasticity and we support it, we remain resilient and adaptable, i.e., we are able to learn how to turn around from an extreme sympathetic and come back to middle, and we know how to arouse and embody out of dissociation and back towards homeostasis. That is what nervous system resilience does. That's why I say it's the keys to the kingdom, because everything you set out there has to come out from a congruent use of your inner state and the outer world. And that requires this vocabulary. So, neuroplasticity makes you resilient, it makes you adaptable, it makes you, in the brain, it makes you prime and use your prefrontal cortex a bit more when typically it might not be online as much. So let me give you an example. Midbrain, if you put your fingers over your ears and you were to drill them in till they touched, that's your midbrain, home of many structures associated with the limbic brain. That is self-preservation. It is food, shelter, dreaming at night, sex, procreation, basic needs met. It's vital to your survival. The front of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, is what we tend to associate with our more executive command functioning, the abstract thinking, empathy, innovation, joy, problem solving, eloquence, poetry, all of the things that are not necessary for us to breathe, but necessary for our spirit to feel whole. So that's how most people categorize midbrain and frontal brain. When we are not supporting neuroplasticity, our midbrain becomes the dominant governing structure or lens for life. By way of reinforcement, the more we are incongruent in our responses, the more the brain says, you keep choosing this regardless of the needs of the environment. Therefore, it must be so freaking important. So I'm going to make it easier for you to choose that again and again and again. Because the brain's job is to be efficient. So the more you default to incongruent state, internal state, and external world, the more you reinforce that as your default experience, lens, and behavior. You habituate it very quickly. And then we say this horrible thing. We say, that's just who I am. That's what my mom said about being Sicilian. That's what I jokingly say about being Sicilian. That's just who I am. I'm gonna grab your face like that because you're so cute. And it might hurt you. That's just who we are. Not really. That's who we've habituated ourselves to be by way of unconscious neuroplasticity, reinforcing directions that we don't know how to get in or out of intentionally. So that's how midbrain governs the show. By way of active neuroplastic inducement, the front of your brain can start to layer in a different story. It can start to give you option B. And neuroplasticity doesn't care if option B is real or ever experienced in the past. If it's created with just the right set of conditions, your brain will buy option B and start to habituate towards it. And that requires you to activate your prefrontal cortex. Self-directed neuroplasticity requires the front of your brain to be highly recruited, which you will experience in the afternoon's meditation because it's the second step of the meditation. High recruitment here and midbrain quieting. So high recruitment here, midbrain quieting. When midbrain gets louder, front of the brain loses ability to track all those resources. So this represents blood oxygen and glucose. Blood oxygen and glucose, quiet frontal brain. Blood oxygen and glucose, quiet midbrain. They're inversely related by way of the anterior cingulate cortex, which means we have a seesaw. We can state change, not just here, from there and there, but we can state change from midbrain to frontal brain and back and forth at will. And when we learn the keys to do that, then we spark neuroplastic engagement. And if I can spark neuroplastic engagement at will, then that means I can learn or unlearn anything. And everything that held you back, that made you say at the fire, these are your future wishes. There are present time stories holding you back from that, which is why those are your future wishes, right? Every single one of those stories, albeit might have been 100% real. Yes, your trauma and your culture and your stories and your ethnicity are 100% lived truth for you. But that still does not mean they are not also habituated. So if and when we can loosen that habituation to those conscious and subconscious stories, then your past does not predict your future, nor does your culture, your socioeconomics, your ethnicity, or your race to some degree. because the reality is we're also dealing with a world that collectively buys into this habituation. So yes, we are fighting against large machines. But the only way to fight against large machines is to pull yourself out as the cog and go over here and do the self-governance. So, neuroplasticity is the superpower. It is the thing that gave my spiritual practice legs, embodied legs. Not lofty float away. I floated away my whole life to dissociative seizure degrees. I had a great metaphysical teacher. So she said to me, she said, you know, we all want to like touch source. We all want to like have our guides, and we all want to like be visited by the angels and all that stuff. We think it's just so amazing. And she said, been there, done that. That's who I was before I had this body. That's who I'm going to be after. Like, that's boring. She goes, you know what cojones it takes to be in a body? To leave source and go into this body that pees itself when I have a seizure? Or pees the bed when you're 5 and you're ashamed for life because of it? Do you know what kind of crazy agenda it takes for source wave to particleize into a particle just to have the experience of being that? Holy crap, I don't want to waste a minute of that. So here we are. For how many years? Well, if you're pre-longevity biohacking movement, 85 years. If you're a biohacker, 180. Okay, there's a movement now. I'm going to get in trouble when I say that. It's coming out because I'm over here. The Don't Die movement. How many of you have heard that? What the fuck? How about live fully, yay? And then death is this incredible return home. But don't die? That causes this extreme, oh my God, I can't live without my Oura ring. How do I know if I slept last night? Well, were you unconscious? Did you wake up? Do you feel good? Maybe you slept. Or, oh my God, I just got the test and my mitochondria ATP output is like 6.2. It's supposed to be 6.7. Why? So we don't die? Yeah, it's amazing. I live this stuff. I'm making fun of myself as much as anyone else. I do a lot of these things, but it comes with imbalance. It comes with a push to one of these directions, and I have to actually work really hard not to let it rule my thoughts, to do the next thing to contribute to my well-being. And so we have an opportunity to simplify, to go touch the endogenous dials. We've got dials. All we have to do is know what volume level we're at in either direction and put the hand on the dial and dial it. And wherever we dial to, in hopes that that is congruent with the outer world, then we energy efficiently emerge as the person we are supposed to be in that moment. And when we are in a congruent state with the environment around us, we are acting like a wave, not a particle. We are masterful at having a particle experience, as though we are individuals. And we are aching in our hearts to go home. And we are crushed when society pushes us more towards particleized division. And we don't have to escape this to go home. We can dial, and you can dial into empathic resonance. But it requires you to unlink from the habituated stories that have unconsciously landed you in a place that you have no idea how to navigate out of or away from. And neurosculpting was that for me. I will go in depth into the 5-step neurosculpting meditation process later today, and then I'm going to put you into a guided experience so you could put your hand on the first dial and start to play with it. But as a wrap up in a nutshell teaser, your brain will listen to what you have to tell it if you give it the set of conditions it needs to listen well and respond instantly. And I'm going to give you just one quick little example. If you were to, with your own creative narrative mind, close your eyes for 1 second, pretend like your awareness is a spotlight, and spotlight the tip of your tongue, glide that spotlight across the tongue to the back of the tongue, to underneath the tongue, and tell me if you salivate. Oh, wow, magic. Okay, your body's listening to your input consciously, subconsciously, unconsciously, and consciously, and then superconsciously. And it's responding through the interface. And what made you salivate was an autonomic response to a conscious thought. That's not, science still debates that that's real. But you salivated. But science is like, well, we don't know if that's real. Are you kidding me? You just did it. So, bringing it all home. You have stories that make you think what you said there is a future aspiration. Those stories are habituated from wherever, whenever, however you experience them. And because of those habituated stories, it pushes you out of homeostasis into one of these unconscious directions through life, and now you're not congruent and you don't know why, so you make where you are bad, and you try to be somewhere else. And all of that is part and parcel of the same process, is getting into the nervous system with neuroplastic, self-directed intention. And it's pragmatic, it's 5 steps, super easy, super playful, and it's a superpower. And so I'm going to give that to you later today. But I did want to leave about 10 minutes for questions or thoughts. Yeah?
I am curious about something that you said in your experience, because when you had this experience, when you were struck by lighting, and you clearly specified that you were to the extreme of the parasympathetic, you were completely shut off. And a lot of thought and a lot of practices always go towards, let's go into meditation and let's go deep into that. Well, what caught my attention is that your experience, or what I seem to understand is like, if you're so far in going into the parasympathetic, actually the countermeasure would be like going into movement instead of going like keep on meditation. So just to ratify that point, because that seems to me is very interesting. So yes. It would be like you see the snake, you jump, and it's like going into the opposite of what you were feeling. And
100,000,000%. We are now, in the last 30 years, understand polyvagal theory, and it saved my life. And polyvagal theory is exactly that, is that when you are too parasympathetic, in order for your body to bring your heart rate into balance, you must arouse. So let's just take heart rate for 1 second. When you're in homeostasis, your heart rate is slow and easy. Arousal, it speeds up. Parasympathetic, it slows down. So meditation is going to slow down your heart. Right? That's measurable, right? When you are already a parasympathetic stress response habituated person, then number one, you're likely to have lower heart rate anyway. Most parasympathetic people have low blood pressure and low heart rate. They also have POTS where they go from sit to stand and they get woozy. That's a sign of your heart rate not being able to adjust to the arousal needs of standing. So your heart rate's already depressed, and then you try to calm down through a tool that's going to lower your heart rate even more, and now you're going to start messing with bradycardia, which is what my seizures were. heart rate shuts down to dangerous levels where you do not oxygenate your brain. So yeah, not everyone needs to calm down, and not every one person is just this or just that. We fluctuate our response based on the needs of the moment. So to know what that is means I have ability to reach for the right tool. Oh, I'm aroused, I can do some calm down stuff. I'm parasympathetic shutdown, I can arouse, I can vagal tone. Humming, singing, chanting, ice plunge, shaking, movement, all of those things. Inhale. I'll give you one quick tool because some of you may not be later, so at the talk later I want to give you one actionable tool to pull yourself from there to here or from there to here. That's not meditation based. You're breathing. Understand this for just a minute. When you breathe in, diaphragm goes down, you increase the volume of space to hold oxygen. Increased volume, heart says, oh, that's really big. I gotta pump blood through it just as fast to get to the brain, so I better speed up, right? Inhale, heart rate speeds up, diastolic pressure. Exhale, space volume reduces, heart goes, I don't have to work so hard to get blood through that small little space. I can slow down. So an inhale will speed your heart, and exhale will decelerate it. Brakes, gas, brakes, gas. So when you are aroused, it is, so anyone in here who's had anxiety and someone said, just breathe, and you're like, it doesn't work. Okay, you don't tell someone with anxiety to breathe because the association is, you tell them to exhale. It's the brakes. Till they're empty. Long exhale decelerates. If you're in parasympathetic shutdown and overwhelm, then your focus is a profound, intentional inhale through the nose. Deep, strong. Even better, double inhale and you'll get a boost of adrenaline. And you've got brakes and accelerator right there. So when you are there, do not reach for headspace. Reach for an inhale. When you're there, reach for an exhale or headspace or insight timer or calm app or any meditation you like and bring yourself down. But do not reach for meditation when you are there, unless it's neurosculpting meditation, because we are countering parasympathetic and sympathetic every step of the way. Yeah.
This is really, really, really interesting. So thank you so much. And I've done a lot of jokes about this work, so I understand where you're coming from. What's interesting is I actually experience almost both at the same time.
Yeah.
So I feel like my analyzer is super high sometimes, or my brain is just going and I'm stuck in that midbrain, but I'm in a state of complete shutdown.
Yeah, because there's a threshold. So this is what happens. When we do not learn or have access to proper sympathetic discharge tools, and we go all the way over here to unsustainable levels of sympathetic arousal, the dorsal vagus nerve will kick in and tamp it down, bringing us full circle back to here. So I talked about it as a line. It's more like a circle. So you can get to sympathetic threshold and then freeze to tamp it down because you don't have safe discharge tools or practices at your disposal. So the more you discharge sympathetic arousal as it's happening, the less you will get to the shutdown space. But what happens is over time, as we do that, we habituate to it. And we habituate to a flash of arousal that is so fast that the freeze comes in before we even think about it. That's what happens in the freeze cycle. Yeah.
Yes. It's amazing to think about this at the individual level, but I love so much you expanding it to understand where we are as a society, as a collective consciousness, and just how we got here now to where arousal, because it hasn't had these safe mechanisms for expression or regulation, now manifesting as egregious war, egregious violence, uncontained aggression. And you see that now at this mass scale.
Absolutely. And again, the quantum world says we are all one anyway. So if we can't figure out an understanding of where our own base operating system is and why and how to govern it, how do we expect institutions to govern anything? And again, I'm not like a political person. I look at it as a human. And I don't see a congruence between having our internal needs met and an understanding of how to use our nervous system and society's understanding of how to navigate it. I just don't see congruence. But maybe we are.
I understand that side of the stage and how we get these anxiety attacks and everything, but I'm having difficulty understanding the parasympathetic shutdown.
And possibly maybe because maybe you don't habituate to going there, but parasympathetic shutdown is, okay, when you're in a movie and there's something scary and you go, that's parasympathetic level 0.1. That's hold the breath, go quiet. That's what it is. When you hear something in the woods, a crackling, and you go, that's parasympathetic. Freeze, stop, orient. It's an orientation response. So to minimize external stimulus and focus on one thing, you have to go a little parasympathetic in the turn my head, turn my eyes, turn my ears. Where is the stimulus coming from? And I have to be still to do that. That is like normal, healthy parasympathetic. Another parasympathetic is I'm embarrassed. Maybe I have stage fright and I go out and I flush red, vasodilation. That's parasympathetic. Those are normal access to it, and we all do that. But then there's the walk in and it's a surprise party and everyone screams, surprise, and most people go parasympathetic. Now, if that's your default mode and parasympathetic is how you respond to overstimulation, then it starts to grow its vocabulary. Oh, bigger stimulation, go quiet even more. Frozen, anesthetize, animals in the wild. When a predator gets an animal, the tiger gets the deer will go parasympathetic and play dead before it'll surrender. It's a surrender response. And in that surrender, there are endorphins that anesthetize. So those with parasympathetic habituation have extremely high pain tolerance. Ridiculously high pain tolerance because they don't feel their bodies from here down. I could withstand so much pain as a child that it would have to level me to actually say something about it, but that's a mammalian self-preservation. Yeah.
I haven't heard you talk much about the parasympathetic rest and digest. That's all I've heard about.
Yes.
Is that sympathetic is fight or flight, and when you're in the woods and you hear something, that feels very fight or flight, whereas parasympathetic is rest and digest.
Yeah.
Is that you're still vilifying that part of it?
I'm saying that rest and digest is, this gets very technical, but there are two tracks of the vagus nerve, two tracks of parasympathetic engagement. One is ventral vagal, which is the front side of the vagus nerve. That is what rest and digest is. But freeze is dorsal vagal, which is the back side of the nerve. And dorsal vagal is still parasympathetic, but it is not really a good use for a mammalian brain with oxygen needs. So when people say parasympathetic equals rest and digest, they're actually saying ventral vagal, which is just enough mobilization, sympathetic access, and just enough of shutdown blended into homeostasis. And it's been labeled parasympathetic, and that's not accurate. It's ventral vagal, which is just a kind of parasympathetic. So that we have now made all of these people over here feel shame for being that, and like they need to go all the way over here, when in fact life may not be asking them that. So yes, rest and digest engages ventral parasympathetic, but not dorsal. The minute you go into dorsal, you're screwed.
The habitual actions are just a byproduct of whatever happened before, right? And any tips or thoughts on how to figure out where those thoughts are coming from in order to change your habits?
So this is a great question. It's a great question. That's therapy, and I'm not a therapist. But I'll tell you, you don't need to. You actually don't need to know where they come from, why you have them, or who gave them to you. All you need to know is the neurosculpting technique, and you can unlink from any habituated story, conscious or unconscious. And I'm going to share some insane stories in the afternoon session about getting quadriplegics to move with just neurosculpting. So you don't need to know how, why. You only need to use the protocol, and your unconscious will find it. Just like you didn't need to know how or why your salivary glands kick in, you just did it. It's similar. I think we're about to wrap up. So any last question? Well, thank you so much for your time.